While the Dark Presence is gearing up to make its first strike and chaos spirals out of control, the final live event of the chapter is charging at us full throttle. With the bug hive spreading fast, the main question remains, what's the plan behind the invasion? So prepare yourselves to face off against the Dark Presence and the Spirit Realm, grab your gear, lock and load, and let's get to it. This reality is packed with mysteries, some of them straight up mind-blowing. And the start of Chapter 6, Season 4, only added more questions to the pile. The answers might just lie with the OXR organization, and with those who once inhabited this island. Over the past seasons, we've met dozens of characters from different realities, from the Ninja Turtles to Superman, but some of them raise way more questions than others. And OXR? They're the centerpiece of the final puzzle. They might hold the key to secrets that have been hiding in the shadows this whole time. We only learned that bugs had been crawling under our feet this whole time, thanks to the final event of last season. The swarm has already taken nearly half the island, and a disaster this big was never just random chance. But the real question now is, how do we actually stop the invasion and the Dark's presence? And can we? For now, the only ones even close to giving us answers are OXR. And thanks to the Lieutenant's radio transmissions, we learned that these bugs, or Onimorphs, aren't just random insects crawling out of the spirit realm. They were forged through dark magic and unleashed to turn the lives of loopers and the people of Oninoshima into a living nightmare. But the biggest mystery is still who created these things and how. At the end of last season, the Dark Presence controlling Dago awakened a creature straight up Kraken-like, not to wipe out every looper on the island. It feels like the darkness already knows there are other shards of the 0 point out there, shards he's desperate to claim. Because if past events taught us anything, it's this. Anyone who simply learns it exists ends up craving that raw power and energy of the epicenter. And after everything we've seen, the bugs, the puppeteer, I honestly can't wait to find out what the Dark Lord himself actually looks like. Something tells me he's not gonna stay hidden for long. And when he finally decides to introduce himself to the loopers, it's probably going to be in the most twisted way possible, by taking over the entire island. But the spirit realm and all this demonic chaos didn't just bring bugs to the island, it also brought an organization that's been fighting them, OXR. Where they came from and how they ended up here, we already covered in past videos. But this time, I want to dig into their darker side, what OXR really is, and who might have founded it in the first place. In the latest update, we got a batch of new OXR agent skins. And one of them, he's got an emote with a board full of evidence, and not just random notes, but straight up references to the last reality, the cube, and every key event that's ever shaped Fortnite. Like I've said before, I can't shake the feeling that OXR is basically a reality. Because if we go by Onyx Winter's words, her ancestors, and even she herself, have always lived on Oninoshima. So yeah, that's where the real questions and theories start flooding in. And if we start connecting the dots, we'll probably find our answer with the Red Cube event. Yeah, the one the community gave all kinds of names to. Revan, Daniel, and plenty of others. Back in Chapter 1, the cube appeared in the... What's even more interesting is that the runes covering it aren't the same symbols we saw on the cube in Chapter 1. That alone raises a lot of questions. Many players today bang and the reshaping of our realities, this might actually be the first true appearance of the cube. Because as we're starting to understand, the OG island isn't exactly the same. It's a parallel reality, another world. Characters look familiar, but they're not identical. That could mean OXR knows way more than we think. And maybe those emotes with the cubes are hinting at exactly we see remixed versions. And what happens when we reach the final Season 10? What then? I'll do my best to help untangle this web of universes for you. What if this really is Chapter 1, but from an alternate reality where everything played out differently? Honestly, that's probably the case. And I think the answer has been right in front of us the whole time, we just haven't completed the cycle yet. Remember, the fracture event rewound us back to a time before the imagined order even existed. Events do repeat, but loopers can influence them set in stone. A perfect example of this logic is Marvel's Loki series. Loki's fate was supposed to be predetermined. He was destined to die at the hands of Thanos. But one of his variants broke free of the cycle, and from that moment on, the future kept shifting depending on his choices. Fortnite's universe could absolutely work the same way. Back in Chapter 1, the story was likely stuck in a loop. Just look at Jonesy's bunker drawings. But the actions of the Seven pushed that cycle onto a brand new path. Without a doubt, this cycle will end, and a new one will begin. The only real question is, how do we get there? That's entirely up to the choices of our main characters. And since we've already mentioned the meteor from Season 3, the very boy inside might play a role again. So if the old events do return, they'll play out completely differently this time. Now I want to talk about the very first member of the legendary Seven, who we met after the crash of the cosmic meteor. Some of you younglings are probably scratching your heads, wondering how one single character could make or break the next 13 seasons. Saying it out loud almost sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But trust me, it's not. The Visitor was the spark that ignited the entire Fortnite storyline. If the meteor had never existed, the Visitor couldn't have landed on the island, and the ripple effects of his absence would have been massive. For starters, and not the cozy kind, because these guys knew how to throw a real chaos party. That's why the IO kept such a close watch on the crash site, to track one of their greatest enemies. But here's the thing, they didn't catch him, at least not in the original reality. But in our new one, who knows? So let's fire up those brain cells and get back to the rockets. Here's the catch. What if, in this new reality, there was no meteor? And no meteor means no visitor, and no visitor means in the island without that flying contraption. Nothing would have happened. The island would have stayed exactly the same, and without the rift, no drift either. This chain of events could go on forever, because that tear in the sky was the first time we saw our world wasn't as solid as it seemed. Can flip the entire world upside down. It's fascinating to think about how the community would have reacted if Fortnite were bothering you with lore and map changes. But jokes aside, if that rift hadn't opened, we never would have gotten the cube. And the cube is one of Fortnite's most iconic symbols. Sure, maybe the rift could have opened later for some other reason, but what if instead of a cube it spawned a triangle or a weird trapezoid? Let's be honest, that would have been a huge downgrade from our beloved Kevin, or his alternate form had never found it. That one little crash changed everything. Looking at how the events are changing in OG right now, how will its storyline develop this time? What's in store for Save the World? And does it even tie into OG Fortnite anymore? A few years back, you could argue there was still a PvE storyline. Before the finale of Chapter 1, there was even a full campaign dedicated to the apocalypse. But after that, the link faded away. And when Epic announced they were ceasing support for Save the World, that was basically the final nail in the coffin. Don't get me wrong, there are still some themed events happening in Save the World. But as far as a shared storyline goes, you can definitely kiss that goodbye, at least for now. I'm not saying Epic won't revisit the idea in the future, but considering how focused they are on the metaverse these days, the chances seem pretty slim. Save the World feels like a Walking Dead mode. Sure, there are new weapons, new heroes, sometimes even features brought over from Battle Royale, but travels. I think Sloan's original plan was to permanently get rid of the 0 point. Eliminate the root cause. Think about it. Our zero reality is only connected to the outside world through the 0 point, which allows dimensional travel. But here's the kicker. Our island doesn't have counterparts in other realities, which completely contradicts the whole concept of the island. We fractured the 0 point during the last event, causing a massive explosion that LEGO and even ballistic. In short, from that moment on, Fortnite truly became a multiverse. We can even draw parallels to Loki. Remember when the sacred timeline was destroyed in Season 1? It splintered into millions of alternate versions of itself, creating endless possibilities for storytelling. And here's the best part, they don't even need to scrap old characters. Those characters could easily exist in other dimensions. For example, a new version of Jones could take Gino. Explosion of the 0 point and it split into countless worlds perfectly explains the current storyline. This opens the door to endless twists. And more importantly, the narrative is no longer chained to the 0 point. We're finally free from the tired island destruction trope. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. So what does it all mean for us loopers? It means the rules have changed. The multiverse is wide open. The story isn't stuck in a loop anymore, and literally anything can happen next. And trust me, the ride from here is only going to get wilder.